This is the Lean Builders Hoots on the Ground podcast with absolutely, positively no bullshito. Join us as we dig into exactly what lean construction is and how we can use these concepts and strategies in the field. This podcast will be different as we journey to job sites and mine the minds of lean builders, all in effort to pass forward building knowledge from those who have put their time in to learn a better way. Because that's just what lean builders do. What's up, y'all? Adam Hoots here, the Lean Builder Podcast. Hoots on the ground with no bullshito, Hunter. And I'm coming to you from Denver, Colorado, out here advancing operational excellence. Had a conference, met up with my buddy James Gable. And Hunter, what's your last name again? Fuqua. I'm glad I asked you to pronounce that and not spell it for me. I guess, James, can you take it away? Tell us who James Gable is, and then Hunter would love to hear from you too.
Yeah, absolutely. James Gable, and I'm the General Superintendent for Adolfson Peterson Construction, and we're on one of our projects here right now. I also have a podcast called The Uncommon Communicator, which is where some ways that I've met Adam here.
No. That seems like a brief synopsis.
That's pretty fast, huh?
We'll dive into that more, I guess.
That's it.
Get to know him more. I'm Hunter Fuqua. I'm a field engineer with Adolfson Peterson Construction. Been working here about 2.5 years now. Still learning the ropes, I guess. Kind of learning more on the field side and doing the best I can to learn everything I can here.
No doubt. It's a never-ending learning journey. That's what this lean stuff is all about. James, I want to hear more about you, like who you are, how you got here. You're Millwright, is that
Millwright? Yeah.
Millwright? Yeah.
Yep.
Tell us more, go deeper.
So you want
please.
details? Is that what you're
Yeah, I
telling
mean,
me?
Hunter,
Right.
do you have questions for James? I mean, this is like a no holds barred chance to.
I can just hop right in.
Yeah, get him. Let's go.
Reviews are over, so we're
got
good.
you
Right? So
sandwiched,
you're in the clear. No, so we'll go back a little bit. So I'm a millwright by trade. I started in construction in 1988. Were you born then?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
I was young.
I was
How old
not.
were you? Exactly. So back in 1988, my dad's a millwright, my 3 brothers are millwrights, and my grandpa was a millwright by trade, working for the auto industry. So in construction my entire life. Went through about 2 quarters of college, and my dad's like, just take the summer off, take a quarter off, and then you can go back to school. That was like 34 years ago. So just stuck in construction, went through the apprenticeship. After completing the apprenticeship, just kind of worked my way. I just wanted to be the best that I could at every level. I wanted to be a great apprentice. I wanted to be a good journeyman. Found out that foremen tend to work steadier. And so we're talking through the 90s, like there was some work, we don't have what we have now, which is that lack of workers, right?
Yeah.
You had to work hard and you had to be the best that you could. So from that point, worked my way through being a foreman for several jobs up to general foreman. And then for a while, I spent a stint as superintendent, actually for quite a while. Spent a small stint as a PM and then back to general superintendent. So it's been kind of that big journey of craft worker to general superintendent.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer when folks, that's why I asked you, Hunter, are you a skilled trade worker? And you're like, well, I dug holes or you installed
Fence
posts.
posts.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
kind of a skilled trade, And millwrights is kind of one of those different trades, I guess. Hunter, are you familiar with millwrights?
For the most part, yeah.
And so I guess for those who aren't, can you break it down? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
you're talking rigging, machining?
Yeah, it's a specialty trade for sure. So a millwright installs conveyor machinery. We do heavy rigging, heavy machinery moving, machinery setting. My brother and my family haven't done a lot of the power industry, which is setting pumps, motors, turbines, setting turbines, precision work, anything that's precision. Probably the best job I've ever worked was for United Launch Alliance, which is moving all of their kind of one-of-a-kind rocket equipment here from Denver down to Decatur, Alabama. And then we also moved their upper stage work from San Diego down to Decatur, Alabama. So this is all precision alignment stuff. Like there's things that are within a thousandth of an inch over the course of 100 feet. Precision setting of that type of equipment. So that's ideally what a millwright does. We like to say that we're under roofers. Everything under the roof is all millwright work. So we do a little bit of carpentry. Like if you go back, the old time millwright was building gears out of wood in the wood mills. Like they were
I did not know
handcrafting
that.
these, gearing and that machinery. So that goes back to where we build and make things. Like one of the jobs that I walked on with my dad, or I had a chance to go on after my dad, was MJB Coffee. And we get there and there's some pallet conveying right there. And I was telling him about it because we're moving some new machinery in like 25 years later, right? And he's like, yeah, I built that. And this is how back then they dropped angle iron off, gears, motors, chains, and said, build it. Like now we bring them in the field,
Yeah.
build this conveyor. He did that. Like I saw that machine that he had built like 20 years earlier. It's really cool. Now we bring it in and put 4 anchors in it and we're done.
Yeah.
We've gotten a lot better, and that really talks more on the lean side, right? We've learned how to build that stuff ahead of time, bring it in, and stop that long installation time.
Yeah. It's not long before we prefab and everything, at least I think, I guess. Hunter, what do you think about prefabrication and doing things off-site to make on-site easier?
I think as far as the prefabrication goes, if you do it right, if you can assemble that all beforehand, it can really save you a lot of time, obviously. I think it's a little harder to do in the sense of a tenant improvement or something. I think it's a lot easier in some of those ground up situations where, let's say, maybe you don't have windows in, you can bring this big prefab setup into that area or something like that. But I think it's, as far as I've seen, it's been a little harder in the kind of tenant improvement and renovation side. I'd be curious how kind of more things in your experience, how they interact with in that setting, because it's just a little different in my mind, because that ground up, you can prefabricate all your concrete, you can prefabricate all the plumbing and electrical in the walls and everything. There can be a lot of different applications for that, but I'm not sure if I've seen it as much in the renovation side, which is a little interesting.
Gotcha. I've got some electricians that Carolina Power is the name of the company, and Travis Oswald leads them there in the Carolinas, but they've developed a dolly where they can get a panel in and on, and they'll have all their terminations done and all their wire and all their tails sticking up and out, and they can take the panel, roll it right in, put it in place, pop it on the wall, and then take all their MC cable up overhead to the rooms. There's been things like room kitting that they're doing, which is pretty cool. Like, hey, don't bring any trash in here. Like, no cardboard, no plastic. And they got these like little zip outlets that just zip right in. I'm sure you've seen some of like the cable that you actually just pop in. They're doing all kinds of interesting things from a prefab standpoint. When you think about it from outside of the context of it, what can we just do offsite, even if it's remove the trash from the pieces, that we can really start thinking of creative ways. And again, it talks to what you mentioned earlier. It's like respecting the people on the ground, the people that are there doing the work. Awesome. Well, what else is out there?
Yeah, so our lean journey, we're right at the beginning, and Hunter's been here right along with us as a team to really, we've been talking about 2-second lean, those quick improvements, things like that really get us culturally thinking. I love saying that word, culture.
They were harassing me at the thing today. Like, word gets out.
Oh, were they really?
Yeah.
That's fun. So, but just talking about like our mindset, like how are we changing our world in front of us, gets us thinking in that mindset. So we started with that, and then
Were you doing videos too of like before and after?
We started to. We did a couple.
It's hard, huh?
It was very hard.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of your time to create those videos. You'd be surprised. It's I mean, if it helps a lot of people, it can be big. If it's just a small little thing, sometimes it can be a little hard. But we started to for a little while, and then we're more trying to get down to kind of the roots of it before we just started making all these videos. We wanted to kind of create that culture a little bit to some extent before we just started throwing it out there.
Absolutely.
Kind of went back to the roots.
Yeah, so we have a vehicle for it now. So we're ready, right?
Absolutely.
And then with that, we went to Constraint Boards and Daily Huddles on a project that we were on together where there was really some issues. There were some issues with the schedule. There was just issues with our trade partners were just frustrated. So it was an absolute mess. And then when we took it over, we started immediately with Constraint Boards and with the Daily Huddles. It absolutely changed the atmosphere of that job almost immediately.
On your daily huddle, you had all of your trade partners there gathered. Was it morning, afternoon?
It was every morning, 7 o'clock. The job started at 6. They got their guys started, and the foreman came in, and we chatted for about 15 minutes.
Did you do an afternoon one as well?
We did not, but a couple of them would check in with us.
Gotcha.
We would pretty much know throughout that course of that day kind of where they're working, and it was, when you're starting this, especially with trade partners unfamiliar with it, or burned out by, meetings that, dare I say, fake lean. Is that a word? Is that a term? They've had it and seen it and have been disappointed by it, to get them to get engaged in it. But because this particular team had no engagement before, and we're talking months, we're a couple months into the project, they had no engagement with the schedule. They had no engagement with any say in how the production went daily, that by the time that we offered this to them, they're all over it. They were glad to participate in a meeting and really get their voice heard. And then just the greatest moment was, I don't know if you were there when that happened, but there was a time when we were working between framing, and then we had some ducting that had to go through some framing, and those guys, they made each other accountable for the first time. And it's almost like, you get goosebumps when you think, I didn't have to do that. They just worked it out. He goes, man, you said you were going to do that. And we're not talking sticky notes commitments on the board. We're not even that far yet. We're just having a daily huddle of saying, where are you going to be today? And they worked it out. He was like, you know what? I don't have to be there until, after lunch or something, if you can get that out of the way. And it was just amazing. I think really that's the secret of these communications with lean. I mean, it almost gives you goosebumps to see those conversations happen, and then you almost want more. It almost becomes a little shot of adrenaline, because you want to see, because they're enjoying work. All of a sudden they're liking what they're doing. Everybody is being productive. It was amazing.
Yeah, let's hear it from your words. Tell us about it.
I mean, I kind of agree with that, but really I think as far as those daily huddles go and everything, as much as anything, it brings you back to that root of hey, we're a team. We're actually doing this together. And when we're actually trying to do this work, I don't have to get really pissed at you because, you're not doing your job right. Now it affects me. It's like all of a sudden you bring in that team, everybody's together, and they're like, oh, well, you know what? If you do that this time, I'll go ahead and, get you next time. We'll work around each other a little bit. I really think that daily huddle kind of instituted that team aspect of it. Instead of I'm doing my work, you do your work. It's like, hey, we're going to bring in this team. We're going to actually do this work together. We're going to put it all in motion. It kind of really brought that flow together as far as the team member to team member, because, you realize at the end of the day, we're all people. We all want to get our job done. We want to do it right. We want to do the best we can. But the daily huddles really helped get that first step in place with hey, let's work together, and we're going to do a little better at this job, and then we're going to keep moving one step at a time and just slowly start to flow a lot better.
How'd you see that constraint board working?
I thought the constraint board was great, especially considering the guys could really just go ahead and look at it. They could actually see what was going on. It was a little more visual to them. They could be like, okay, this item is going to be done by this date. We have to have it done then, otherwise it hurts something else. And I think it just made it a lot easier for those guys to visualize everything, see it. A lot of us are visual learners. If I tell you something, it could be out of your head 30 seconds later. But if I'm showing it to you every morning, if I'm showing it to you all the time, this is what needs to be done, and this is what's in the way, it can really help with the actual visual portion of that.
There's an actual science behind that. If you tell somebody something, they retain less than 10%. But if you give it to them audio and visually, then they get 30 to 40%. And then it's if you ask them to say it back to you, then they get 60 to 70%. But if you have them actually teach it to somebody else, they get up to 90% of retention. And that's it's called the learning retention pyramid. So everything you're saying is backed by science. I'm serious. I'm dead serious.
I'm just making it up, but
No.
as long as science agrees with me.
Keep making it up, because you're going down the right path. I love where your passion's at. What else? I mean, constraint logs, roadblock boards, visuals. How does that differ from other projects you've been associated with that don't have those things?
Well, I'd say really it just, from my perspective is obviously not that much experience, but it just, when projects don't seem to have that, it really doesn't draw, once again, that team aspect together. It doesn't draw everybody to be on the same page of working towards that common goal. I think that it really helps with moving that forward, and it's just little things one at a time, and every step forward gets you one step closer.
It really creates those conversations that, oddly enough, you would never have without a board and a single 15-minute meeting. I mean, you don't get those conversations out in the field. And we had taken over a job, that's kind of a long story, but when we went up there to this project, the owner, there's some issues. We're going to help them get to the finish line. AP jumped in, we're going to help them out. That superintendent never had trade partner meetings, and he never had any type of daily huddle. He spent his entire day, and it was a fairly large job site, and we asked him, and he's like, I go and talk to everybody. He goes, I talk to everybody, I don't need any meetings. Like, we immediately put a stop to that.
So stressful on it.
And nobody could ever say you're not working hard, and I think that's the downside of our trade, where we think we need to work hard, but we're not working smart. He had all those conversations, but he was not having them talk together. And if there was actually some issues, I think it was because it was a little medical facility, there's some issues with the mechanical and then the drywall guys, because there's all that coordination with that, with the CT unit and the stuff that's going in there, that he never got them together in a room to talk about it. That's what I think the biggest benefit we get is this group of people for 15 minutes in a day are going to sit in the same room and talk together.
Yeah. And you can rely on it. You can count on it every day. It brings reliability. It brings trust, predictive trust, and then inevitably somebody there cracks a joke, and then somebody gets a little vulnerable, and then you're building like this connection, this reliable promises, as the lean community likes to call it, and with no bullshito, right? Like no fake lean, no bullshito. Why are you smiling? What's bullshito to you?
I don't think he's heard that word before.
No, I hadn't heard it before.
What's bullshito to you, Hunter?
Well, I think you kind of listen to some of the older, or I could say more experienced guys in construction to make it sound a little better.
Older.
I didn't look at him when I said that. Don't worry. Well, and you just kind of listen to it, and it just being a little more forced, a little more just do this because I said so. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of what we need to move away from a little bit. Like, I don't think that's always been the best way. You think about if somebody says, "Hey, do this right now because I think it's better." That doesn't mean you're going to want to do it. That's not going to make you want to do it any better. It's just, and I think listening to some of those stories about how construction kind of used to be in that way really makes me think of how now we need to get away from the just do it to, okay, let's figure out how we can get that, what do you say, coordinated trust, or I can't remember the exact term you just used, but if you kind of go back to that, then you can really start to get those people to work with you. You can actually get them to push the project forward, and you don't have to do everything. You can take a step back and be like, okay, how am I going to plan this now that I know that they're probably going to push to get to this side? What can I do to plan it and avoid anything else along the way? I can do my job a little bit better because of that, and they can just go ahead and do their job and keep them flowing through so they don't have these issues coming up in the future.
Yeah, so. It creates that extra time, because again, you're not out chasing the world, making sure you tell everybody the same story and then relate back to this person and that person. And instead of like this firefighter busy, you're able to be productive and plan the next move and focus on roadblocks and removing the things that are going to be prohibiting folks. I love where your head's at there. Yeah. What else?
Nothing else for me right now. I don't know. I'm trying to learn from the experts right here.
What's your best dad joke? You got dad jokes right there. I can tell.
My best
You'd
dad
laugh.
joke.
I can tell. What do you got?
I don't know. Oh man, I don't know if I have a good dad joke off the top of my head.
Oh man, come on. That's all right. We'll come back.
So
I'll see if I can think.
Hunter's one half of that team. We had 2 field engineers on that project.
Yeah.
That the 2 of them added up together were not my age. So that's really the first time I was the oldest guy by double on that job site.
How does that make you feel?
Well, they were killing it though. You know what? I was excited. It didn't bother me because when I was his age, I gave it out. I'm like, man, you're as old as Moses. Like, were you moving dirt with Methuselah? I mean, I'm asking.
Sometimes that's the only way to get along with this business.
And you know what? I have plenty coming my way. So he does have some good dad jokes too. I'll tell you that.
I can tell the laugh.
I'm
like
a little
that.
more
You have to.
old soul, I guess.
I mean, I can bleep them out too if you want to just like a solid joke.
I'm just trying to think. I guess I got one.
What you got?
All right, so what does a frog do when its car breaks down?
Frogger's all I can think. Like happen.
He gets around to jump, or he gets it towed. You got to think about that one. You have to think about it a little bit.
Like jumper cables.
Yep, he gets to jump,
Towed.
or he gets it towed.
Yeah.
T-O-A-D.
He says that kind of South Carolina-ish.
Yeah, I
Towed.
could dig that.
Yeah.
I wish I had my
It's not
sound
good, dad
effects.
joke,
I
but
could,
you
like,
know. Hey, you can add those afterwards. Don't worry.
I will. Yeah, I'll have to put them in there. Actually, that's a lot of work.
It's only dad joke I can think of.
Oh man.
But it's been a fun journey for us to start there at the beginning. We're looking forward to where it's going to go. We're getting that training. We're seeing a little bit of that progress, and really looking forward to how we can, like this year, our kind of New Year's March, and that's when our kind of we refocus our goals and stuff like that. And our goal this year as a team is to really get the constraint boards. Like you'd asked me earlier about the job here. This had started, almost a year ago. We're going to implement at least constraint boards and daily huddles every day. And those are challenges on the TI projects because you don't always have everybody sitting here at 6 o'clock in the morning. You have trade partners that come in at different hours of the time. They're loading stuff up. So that makes that communication even tougher and harder for us. And that's why I want to bring visual boards in to make sure that when that person does show up, it's at least a one-on-one every time that they've started.
Consistent information, one source, one place. And there's something about the level of accountability when you can actually see it on the board and there's a scoreboard that says, Hunter, you still owe us 5 constraints to be removed on this job. Like, what are you doing, Hunter? Can you help that brother out here?
Well, I don't know. Maybe he has 6. I don't know.
Maybe.
No, I'm just
Maybe
kidding.
he has 6, but his PPC, his planned percent complete, is like a 90%. So he just keeps taking on your extras that you're not getting done, right?
No, that's completely true. I completely get that.
But that's it, right? There's so much variation, and how do you quantify statistics and calculate? You can make numbers say anything you want. At the end of the day, are we planning, and then are we as we plan? Are we protecting the plan? Talk about some of the ways you protect a plan in the field.
Regarding schedule as far as plan, or what do you see as plan? Like the original plan you make, the plan you make week to week? Just curious what you're...
Yeah, planning,
what you're
right? Because
thinking.
plans, schedules are always like living, breathing documents. So.
Oh, yeah. I'll let the experience start us off on this one.
Well, first it starts with the commitments, right? And then all we're doing is making people accountable to the commitments. How are we proceeding with that plan? I mean, we have, probably like most of America, people don't show up some days.
Mm-hmm.
We have some of our executed tasks are 3-day durations on some of our smaller projects. When you're late a day, you're day for day at that point. And then the other thing is we try our best not to stack because if we have that opportunity, we're not having everybody work on top of each other. It's not like we're doing multi-floor kind of work, but when that person is late, then now we're stacked on top of each other. Those are the things that we try to eliminate because we don't want to push the next guy off either. Those are the things that they're challenges that we have that I don't know that we have an effective plan other than a phone call and hopefully they answer, right? Those are some of the struggles that we're having with trade partners is not answering phone calls. Finding who is actually the boots on the ground, getting to that point, and sometimes those change day to day.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all challenges. Like if you're on a big project and you've got 30 drywallers, you're missing 5-10 of them, you're going to lose some production, but you got some production. On some of our jobs, you got 3 drywallers and one only shows up and he's the finisher, right? So
you can't do anything.
You can't do anything. He's like, I'm only here when these guys are done. So those are challenges that we get, but it really goes back to that early communication. That's one thing that every trade partner wants to come in and get it done.
Yeah.
That's what we're motivated from, or trying to motivate them from. They all want to get done and get out. They don't want to drag the sucker out. If we can plan it well and communicate the plan early to them, then their own plan, hey, you said you're going to be here, then all of that kind of creates that flow. Ultimately, we just want stuff in and stuff out.
Yeah. People in, people out, right? I mean, it's, and the faster we can flow efficiently with the whole process and not just one individual piece, right? Which makes, when we bring everybody together, Hunter, to your point earlier, it's now the drywaller knows why he can't hang rock on that wall because the framer who also works for the drywaller busted up the conduit that has to be replaced, and now it's like, oh, I see the whole picture here. Hunter, what are some of the challenges that you've found out in the field, like some of the things that are just most frustrating to you?
I would say, I mean, it's probably some of those uncontrollables. It's those things that happen on the site that maybe the drawings were missing, or there's, something wasn't shown that you thought was, somebody had a missing scope. I'd say some of those are the most frustrating items that I've had to deal with, because those are obviously going to be those fire type of items. You're going to be fighting that fire right off, and you have to get it done, otherwise something else can't happen. I'd say those are probably one of the more frustrating things. It's at the end of the day, you can control what you can control, right? So you kind of have to step up to whatever it is, But when it comes to those items where you just have to stop in place, you have to sit back and think, I'd say those are really the hardest ones. Those are the ones where you really got to solve the problem. It's not just laid out for you. It's not just planned. It's not, somebody else is building this work. It's like, okay, what do I have to do to be able to get us from A to B and as fast as possible?
A wise man once told me, and please confirm this because I'm still trying to learn this as well, but control is an illusion, that you never really fully have control, that you can only steer things. What's your reaction to
That, so, and I heard the Silver Fox.
Yeah.
Those exact same words.
Another old guy.
And I completely agree with it. Control is an illusion. You think you have control. He has another follow-up to that, though. Control is an illusion. Something at best. It's a good thing you got time to edit all this. Control is an illusion. We can influence at best.
Yeah.
So we can't really control. And then and that's part of our issue, I think, when you look old school, like we were looking, that guy was like the head of the octopus, and he controlled everything, right? Controlled that job, and he stayed there from 6 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, and he was controlling everything. But if he took a day off, nothing happened, and that's a problem. And when you talk about influence at best, which is I'd heard that saying go, if you're making influences and giving people responsibility, giving people the authority to make those decisions, then they're owning it, right? And that's where I think that influence comes in. Like, control is an illusion, but if you can influence, you're going to have people who are out influencing other people and making those changes.
What do you think, young man? How'd he do?
I think that's pretty good. I think that's not a bad description of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, that's, especially in our role as the GC, that's very true. You're not going to be controlling each one of these people. If you try to do that, you're never going to be able to do your own job. You're really influencing them, putting them in the right direction, putting them in a good place to be able to succeed. But at the end of the day, you're not controlling them. Otherwise, nothing would happen on our job sites. Nothing would ever get done.
Not to tell you which side of the fence I'm on, but I'm over here on this one. I have teenage daughters and 2 15-year-old girls, and raising children is very much the same way, where it's like, you might think you have control over them, and you might have control for 2 or 3 years while they're dependent on you to feed them, but as soon as they start thinking for themselves, it's like, best you have influence and the ability to steer based on what you've taught them.
So on that, I mean, how is that not unlike our projects as well too, right? You create a level of trust with your children. You need to create a level of trust with those that we work with as well too.
Yeah.
And when there's that trust, then that's that influence that you're talking about. Because you're right, when you control, it's all the stuff now you don't get to see. Right, they're doing stuff behind your back. I'm not joking, like you. There's times when there were jobs where when that superintendent wasn't there, people would literally sit down.
Yeah.
Right, if they didn't see the boss, well, then you're not.
He's coming!
He's coming! Oh no!
Safety guy! They're laughing because
your lid on.
Exactly. That's funny. That's true though. It's real life.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's finish up. I want a piece of advice for the old school folks out there from you. Like, what would you tell the old school?
All right, here's your
and I'm
challenge.
gonna sign. Bring it
I'm gonna put this post out there.
I'm gonna let you think on it while we bombard.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
See, you don't get to think. You don't get to think.
All right. I
Yeah,
mean,
sometimes
it's
that's
pretty
better,
obvious,
honestly.
though, right?
You just
What,
spit it out.
like, if you had to leave one piece of advice for that next generation of people coming in, the next lean builder, because everything we're talking about is what lean builders do, daily
Right.
huddles. What's the one piece of advice for that future lean builder?
I think this is the key to anything is learn to solve problems and learn to embrace them. Because what do we do as builders? We solve problems, right? And how do we solve problems? We do it through drive and schedule. We do it through building drawings that maybe aren't, complete. Like, we solve problems every day. And I've seen guys at the end of their career who have lost their drive to solve problems. And if you can't embrace that and know that that's what drives you every day and that's your purpose, then you're not going to be successful.
4 Types of Problems by Art Smalley. It's a fantastic book. The first one is firefighting, like, oh my gosh, the problems. The second one's gap from standard, like what is the standard and what are we missing. The third one is target condition, like what are we striving for. And the fourth one is like open-ended, we just solved the problem we never even knew we had. Man, you just made my wheels turn like crazy. You have no idea what you just said.
Hey, there you go. You got to follow up with that one at some point.
Awesome. Yeah. Good luck with that, Hunter.
What do you got for me?
Yeah. What do you got?
Along a similar word, but adapt. Just, I feel like, some people get set in their ways pretty easy. They get comfortable with whatever they're doing. We're all accustomed to that at some point, right? But when you've been doing it for, 30, 40, 50 years, you've been doing this trade. I'm not saying you've been doing it for 50 years,
40 though, yeah.
Close. Yeah, pretty close.
I'm not trying to tell everyone your age, but anyway. Adapt, make sure you can keep up with the times, keep up with things that are changing, but at the same time, teach, don't let be lost what you've learned and what you've had over your time, because people my age and as we go, really need to know the actual, first skills and why, now that it's changed, why this could be easier, why it could be harder for certain situations. Those skills are so important because they're really the ground level, basic, fundamental skills. I would say, adapt and then be able to teach, but also let the younger kids teach you to be able to adapt.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's like this teacher-learner mindset.
Yeah,
some days you're the teacher, some days you're the learner. Learning doesn't always have to be technical. It could be about your day, about your week, about your family. That's what lean builders do. That's the questions they ask to develop the trust and to develop this want to make reliable commitments. So I love it. I appreciate it, guys. Anything you want to leave the Lean Builder Nation with here? Have you read the book, Hunter?
I have read the book.
Yeah, we read it.
Yep, we all read the book.
That's right, you got to ask that question. Of course we did. Yeah.
What'd you think of it?
I love the kolaches section.
Yeah.
And then I love the burritos. And then I also love the steaks. I wasn't originally, I'll be honest, a Fable fan.
Yeah.
I'm a textbook, give me some facts, right? But once we read through that process, which we're now doing, he started here, just do this. And then it's hey, how about add this? And as that stuff was additive, you actually got to see it in an actual project site. For me, that was how that lean builder they built within that book, almost intentionally added those things. That's what we're trying to do, and now take those, where are we at in our next journey? What are we going to add now to do it better? Because we originally were do it all. But you can't do it all. Now we're starting and kind of working that way.
Small J's.
Yeah, I kind of like that it was a Fable, just in terms of, I like how I can be able to try to solve the problem as it's going, because you hear the problem and you're oh, what would I do in this situation? It was kind of interesting to think about what you would do in this situation, and then continue on the book and see what else was, I guess, solved in terms of what the problem was in that specific case. I thought that part was kind of interesting in terms of going along with the story. That's just how my mind works. I like to be able to solve the problem when I can. I thought that was at least kind of fun for me. I could sit there and try to solve through it as we
So you
went.
like solving problems. I liked adapting and learning. I think we're right in tune with each other.
There's
each other's advice.
Have y'all seen that YouTube video where the wife has a nail in her forehead?
Yep.
I'll have to show you afterwards. It's not about the nail.
It's not
right?
about the nail.
I often suffer from trying to solve all the problems, and in reality I just have to shut up and listen. And how much easier is that? Trying to solve the problem. Like, it's not about the nail, even though your sweaters are snagging on the nail in your forehead. I can't wait for you to see that.
I'm curious.
Anyway,
This
cool.
has piqued my interest.
Good. That's the goal. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Again, I think just the learning, the trust, the lessons learned from the job site, the wisdom from young to old, old to young, or new to whatever we want to call that, right? That's sharing knowledge. That's how we get better as a team. That's what lean builders do. So thank you for the time.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Yep.
Be nice.